Hey guys, what's up? Aru. You know, this video was supposed to be how cats are the most terrifying things in the world simply because Venti was allergic to it, but now that I've finished Natlan Archon quest as well as the story quests related to it, cats in this game might actually hold more knowledge than I thought, but it's not just cats. It's Cheshire cats, finches, false dreams, fantasy stories, looking glasses, and allegories, as well as the entire concept of dreams that might have been inspired by Alice in Wonderland, which will of course include some of the Hexen Circle and the Tsaritsa or Celestia as the Queen of Hearts and the Red Queen. Now, if you haven't read or watched Alice in Wonderland, don't worry, because all you need to know is that Alice in Wonderland is about Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass is about chess. And I think the first book goes back to the first time we fell into this rabbit hole that is Teyvat 500 years ago, and today we wake up in the second story. A theatrical dream that might have actually happened already but is portrayed as a recurring dream that didn't really happen. Sound familiar?
Everything in this world runs in a loop.
This video is going to be a whole theory on whether or not Teyvat is actually real and if everything that we've been doing was just a fantasy story that we need to solve. Honestly, this video is just about Alice in Wonderland paired with this poll that I made not too long ago, if you could still remember. This is going to be a wild rabbit chase of a video, so timestamps will be down below. Now without further ado, let's get started. When it comes to Alice and the Hexen Circle, I'm pretty sure that a lot of us had a random thought like, hey, maybe Alice's lore is about Wonderland, traveling to different worlds, going on adventures, and leaving for the next. And I'm sure that we've already assumed that Alice is going to be playable at some point. And speaking of magical adventures in a fantastical world, imagine stepping into one filled with legendary characters like Alice, Cheshire Cat, the Knave, the Mad Hatter, and the Queen of Hearts. Well, you can experience all of this through Alice's adventures with the support of today's video, Raid Shadow Legends. It's a fresh take on the classic tale with stunning visuals and immersive gameplay, and not to mention the storytelling and lore of this game is honestly quite good.
How rude! Do they not know that if they made their way here,
Wizard! I know this one. A vulgar, stinking flea bag.
if only you allow me to...
Gods! Fetch my axe!
Using my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen, you'll unlock Tagoar, the epic orc support to carry you through early game, and unlock Fayne at level 15, who is actually considered to be stronger than legendaries. By using the promo code Monkey King, you can also get Sun Wukong for free. And logging in for 14 days lets you add Alice the Wanderer to your roster. That's 2 legendaries and 2 epic champions just by starting the game. After downloading the game, don't forget to join my clan, the Aru Gang, where we can go through this Wonderland together. Thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends for supporting this video. Now back to regular broadcast. Our journey begins once we wake up in the land of Wonderland, Teyvat. Waking up in random places after reading a book might just be the same as waking up in a certain world and experiencing the same thing over and over. And our journey through all 7 nations isn't just the first journey that ever happened, since our sibling has already done that same journey but through her perspective. Now, how does this have anything to do with Alice in Wonderland and dreams? Well, to start with, Alice in Wonderland happened in a dream, but Alice remembers it happening as if it was real and then waking up in the real world. And how she got into Wonderland was by falling into a rabbit hole, almost exactly as the traveler. In the opening scene, we fell here from another world. Whether or not that other world was the real world is unknown, but the travelers in general travel between worlds anyway, so it sort of doesn't matter. What does matter is the fact that we're in Teyvat, and both of the travelers woke up at different times, experiencing different things, but had to go through a similar journey until we reached its end. Now, what if all of that was just a dream, and once we wake up to the actual reality, then the true dilemma comes at the final doorway? And what if that final doorway isn't for playing the hero at the end of the story, but is a revelation to the true crisis in the world called Teyvat? Next is the concept of fantasy, particularly for Mondstadt, since it not only feels like a generic fantasy place, but because it's all rooted in the concept of fantasy and storytelling. I'm sure you've heard of the theories where Vera's Melancholy is a mirrored story of the Travelers, or Dainsleif and Conria, or the Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies being about the Tsaritsa. Fantasies and fairy tales serve as great recordings for past events without being changed by Irminsul. The Dendro Archon Nahida only recently did this, but Venti has been doing this since his Archonhood, and maybe even prior. Albedo calls Mondstadt pastoral, which is countryside poetry. The theater where Anders' daughter keeps her fairy tales is also in Mondstadt, definitely not related to Lisa. And finally, Alice and Klee, which we originally knew about from Mondstadt. Alice's adventure book also starts in Mondstadt, which, hey, our journey also starts here. Many people suggest that the story will go full circle back to Mondstadt, but I think that we'll find the Land of Eternal Flowers first, meeting our sibling and Dainsleif, and then making a decision to go back to the fantasy Wonderland, which in our case is Teyvat, or face reality, which is what our sibling is probably working towards. A very ambiguous and open ending that leaves the reader, who is us, the traveler, with our own findings and see where to go next. It isn't really that far from the Alice in Wonderland books, but I also think that we're not in Wonderland, but rather we're in the Looking Glass world, since every Gnosis is a chess piece and, well, someone has been playing chess the whole time. Remember on Nahida's birthday when she was talking about dreams?
いいえ、なんでもないわ。そうね。私たち、夢の中にいるようなものなのかも。
Yeah, well, ever since Simulanka's events, which was followed by Natlan, I've been wondering if our consciousness is still even our own at this point, and whether or not things that we see are just fabrications of our mind becoming air quotes real in Teyvat. Since the nature of the world changes depending on what gets written and what gets erased and rewritten, a play on Nicole's words. The samsaras that happened in Sumeru are just one example of how technological advancement like the Akasha system could affect a small population. But we also get to see Rukkhadevata's memory be deleted, which changes everyone's memories, but not reality. During Scaramush's quest in Version of Genesis, we get a glimpse of how the Irminsul actually erases memories despite what had already happened in the past, inputting placeholders or connecting it to the closest information. To return Scaramush back to normal or to air quotes preserve information, Nahida had to create a memory of Scaramush through a story within a dream. Now I know Sumeru is all about dreams, but Nahida's power over dreams isn't limited to Sumeru, and neither is the power of dreams becoming reality only possible with Nahida. We have the entirety of these summer events to thank for that, from fixing things using lenses, to fabricating each other's dreams into reality, to reading fantasy books as dreams, to predicting future events through allegories. Another aspect within the game that I find interesting is recurring events and fabricated realities. I'm talking about memories coming to life, thoughts becoming real, and creating your own Wonderland through ley lines. Back in Sumeru, we see the false memories through recurring realities being harvested by a dream. In Nahida's birthday, there's the Ouijet eyes mixed with Candace's amber eyes that could see fates and futures of others. And yes, Ouijet eyes and Candace's amber eyes are different. As it turns out, Ouijet eyes could record things that happened in the past, but for some reason certain phrases align perfectly with what everyone was planning for Nahida's birthday, almost as if it happened during Rukkhadevata's birthday in exactly the same way. This again goes back to the summer events and Natlan, but instead of things happening again, it was slightly different with different people and items with also different narratives, creating a sort of same but not exactly same event or person in place of the other. In Natlan, we could see a similar example of the many souls' consciousness manifesting during our final battle. Guthred, who was supposed to act edgy and dark, was actually nicer and more valiant because that's how the people of Natlan remember him. Bona appeared because her journey for us is still unfinished, and the same goes for Ochkan. Natlan itself also explains the concept of fantastical and imaginary realms quite perfectly through the Night Kingdom, taking a physical item in the real world and creating a metaphorical one in the Night Kingdom, assigning it a role or name like a fishing rod and a rope to fish out ancient names. Even Genius Invocation TCG is a card game with memories and characters in cards. The casket of tomes that carries these memory cards is also called the Box of Scriptures, but can also sense other caskets with memory cards. It's a small Night Kingdom or ley line with fabricated memories. In a sense, many other phenomena in Genshin have already functioned as an incomplete Loom of Fate, working as a proxy tool for editing ley lines and becoming a new ley line entirely. What's even more fascinating is that Golden Apple almost created an entirely different but also physical form of Fischl, an alter ego that manifested itself in Fischl's dreamscape. And Oz is also the result of Fischl's imagination. In Simulanka, other than starting with a book and then waking up in the land of Simulanka, almost everything there has an equal name, character, and events to Natlan. The 3 eggheads and the 3 scholars that the captain knows about, the frog and the squirrel being Capitano and Pavika, and the main event story likely reflecting the Archon quest. Valerian Mirage is basically humans being Oceanids, which is Fontaine's allegorical story. Another perfect example is meeting a fabricated version of Caribert, as well as one of the NPCs meeting a fabricated memory of himself. This one is a bit different since we actually entered someone else's memories and thought of it as a reality when we woke up. We ended up thinking that we were in the real world when we met Clothar, but we were just in our siblings' memories, and the people in Vimara village ended up thinking that Caribert actually existed, but Caribert was just implanted into them. while memories of the Hilly Churls were also fabricated with false stories which they had held as truths. Caribear's memory is honestly the same as Guthred's memories in Natlan, and the title of the quest is also called Bedtime Story, which Alice in Wonderland is also a story told to kids as a bedtime story. Having said all this, you might be wondering, how does all of this even connect to Alice in Wonderland's story for Genshin Impact? Well, every character that Alice meets in Wonderland is an actual reflection of characters in reality. Now, it's worth mentioning that Alice in the Tim Burton movies was able to come to terms with her mirrored characters in reality and move on with a more or less happier life. But the books that Lewis Dodgson and the older Disney movies made it more of a cliffhanger as to how the characters and themes in Wonderland affect and influence Alice in reality, along with being more uneasy and sometimes disturbing when you read it. But from this, we can certainly see that Hoyo's narrative might be leaning towards the books for the Travelers' Archon Quest stories, but the summertime events with Alice are more akin to the latest movies, with happier and more clear endings, as well as adding characters from the summertime events into Teyvat. Now, I hope you can understand what I'm trying to imply here, because reading and editing this script also hurts my head. We've gone over the first book/movie, but we still have the second fairy tale, and the Fatui as well as the main story involves the game of chess, which actually connects well with Through the Looking Glass. Here's where cats and all manner of imaginary things from Alice in Wonderland come in. Within the world of Teyvat, cats have been a recurring creature or entity. You can say that the devs didn't design a character properly, but NPCs have always been unique in their own way. And I think that cats in this world parallel the Cheshire Cats in Alice in Wonderland. The cat in the Night Kingdom, Ossa from Remoria, which is also about false realities through dreams by the way, cats being the mascot for Invocation TCG, and even Scaramouche being portrayed as a cat in his story. Cheshire Cats function as guides in Alice in Wonderland and often give vague hints and lessons to Alice. Add to that the way Cheshire speaks in a very condescending tone, which honestly mirrors Scaramouche and the other cats quite well. There's also the fact that Venti is allergic to cats, which is honestly how this spiral hole of a video actually started. Birds, on the other hand, are also something that parallels Alice in Wonderland. Cranes, crows, and finches come up a lot as eyes and knowledge gatherers and guides to the afterlife. Cloud Retainer and her various antics throughout the Lantern Rite, Nahida as a little bird checking out Golden Apple, as well as using finches in her letter, Vedderfolnir being a crow on an eagle's head, and that's not to mention Natlan's entire race of Ictomisaurs that look like owls, as well as Oz, Kapatsir, and Fischl. Birds in Alice in Wonderland are usually the smart but also goofy characters, often very meddlesome and engaging in matters not related to them, establishing or planning things that don't really go well, and sometimes yap about irrelevant or absurd tales. Now, I'm sure you know some key characters with these traits, and that's just two creatures. Who knows what other parallels we can find through the game. If you think about it, we actually have a lot of phenomena of other worlds or fabricated worlds through mirrors or glass. The first one is actually through Venti's Nirnama detector, which shows a fabricated ghost-like form of someone's imaginary friends, fabricated friends. Depending on one's emotional intensity or passion, these imaginary friends could manifest in different forms as well, with the most bizarre being Timmy's Ruined Golem. Creating an imaginary version through one's stories is also similar to what happened in Natlan's Leylines, but it doesn't stop there, because some creatures can actually be called through mirrors, which we can see from Yaemiko's story quest where we summon the memory of Urakasa as if we're connecting with the spirit through the reflection of Inazuma's ancient past as mentioned in the quest. But that's not the best example because we can actually go through Looking Glass worlds. The Byaku Yahoku world quest also includes a Looking Glass which sadly a lot of people have already forgotten, especially after the Narcissan Kreutz quest in Fontaine, which in its own right showed the past worlds and predicting the doomsday of Teyvat. But the one in Enkanomiya is even more special because of its possible ties with Istaroth, the Shade of Time, who can seemingly recreate the past with both Sin's shades and pocket dimensions, transporting us to what Enkanomiya once was and where we gather the most important stories of all, books. Books that I think cannot be changed by Irminsul because 1. It's written in stone, and 2. It's in a pocket dimension in Enkanomiya of all places. Looking Glasses and Dream Worlds of the past can actually be found in Sumeru through Dainstive and Caribear's quest. I find it interesting that it's through dreams and memories as well, seeing a reflection of the sibling through a looking glass, which is just an old-fashioned way of saying a mirror. While in Bedtime Story, we not only get to meet the fabricated version of Caribear when he grows up, but we also meet our real sibling in Caribear's realm of consciousness, where after our meeting, the screen breaks like a looking glass and we lose our memories. And the same can be said for the Raiden Shogun quest as well as our 600 plus battles with Scaramouche. Now if that happened to you, would you consider it real? A fabrication or a looking glass world? Meeting a real person in someone's memory and not remembering it? Or even fighting something 600 times? Would that moment count as living, or would it be a figment of your imagination? If Nicole says to trust our eyes, then what if our eyes can't even discern reality from fantasy anymore? In my little theorist mind, the Queen of Hearts could either be the Tsaritsa or the Heavenly Principles. As we all know, the Heavenly Principles were quite liberal with how they dealt with the Abyss before, very similar to how the Queen of Hearts would have just called out off with their heads, but right now, they've been dormant and no amount of rule breaking can wake them up for some reason. Be it destroying a divine throne, a DIY leyline generator, or even sussy deals with a shade. The only thing left to verify is a large-scale abyssal eruption, which if you haven't noticed is the key thing we've been preventing in every region. However, something you might not have noticed is that the Harbingers are playing against Celestia using a chessboard. The entire story of Through the Looking Glass is heavily based around the game of chess. And the Red Queen in the Looking Glass is portrayed as a more calculating and adheres strictly to the rules of chess. The Tsaritsa and the Fatui through PYRO are also very carefully making their moves. Moves that would matter even after they die in the process, which could honestly make them the White Queen in this Looking Glass story, and Alice, which is the two siblings' main goal, is to reach the 8th square and become the Queen. Now, whatever chess game Teyvat is being played as, it's definitely not about Wonderland anymore. Rather, it's about the chess battle to gather these 7 treasures of Teyvat and reach that 8th square. Which if you didn't already know, there might be more than 7 elements already. And that 8th square is definitely related to the end of this entire story. Dainsleif says that the war has already begun and that this current time frame is just a continuation of past battles. Khaenri'ah is fighting for its humanity, but the siblings as well as us are fighting to be free from the rules set by the Looking Glass world. Lumine has already gone through the Wonderland and it's our turn to do the same. Once we finish Wonderland and get all 7 treasures, we then need to get into the Looking Glass world and meet the same characters but in a different game. Of which that different game is already underway because our siblings has already made her journey. We on the other hand simply need to catch up and understand that dilemma between the two stories and then make a choice, much like Alice, to either remain in the fantasy Looking Glass world or wake up and face that reality. This is why I think that Nahida's dreams was more than just a funny phrase, why cats are more than just cats, and why the game's stories are so similarly connected. Both main story, side stories, and summer events. As of right now, we've finished Natlan and the Fatui have 6 of the Gnosis. Whether or not we're still in Wonderland or already in the Looking Glass world, 2 out of 4 sides are already within reach of their final pieces or squares. And the third one has already managed to make a Loom of Fate, which can honestly be used to make an entirely new world by now. As for the last player, we've only seen their people show up just now, right as everything is slowly piecing together. And there we go, walking through the so-called Looking Glass theory of Genshin Impact. This isn't really a new theory, honestly. I'm just adding my own spin to what many other lore tubers have already made. And if this is your first time and enjoyed watching my videos, then please leave a like, comment below your thoughts, as well as any corrections that you may have on this video. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to see more videos like these. This one has been sitting on the back burner for a while now, and I'm glad that I got to finally give my input regarding the whole Alice in Wonderland theories of Genshin. Of course, thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends for supporting this video. Be sure to use my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to claim 2 epic champions. And don't forget to use the code Monkey King for a free legendary champion, as well as playing through the game to get Alice. Now then, I'll see you guys in the next video, yeah? As always, like, comment, enjoy, subscribe, and hit the bell for more of my ramblings, and stay mad theorists. Bye!